welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we are going to make a bag that is so unique. I mean, every single thing about it is so unique, so fun, so different that it really gave me like a big bag making sojo boost after I got done making this. Today, we're going to make the Traudy triangular shoulder bag, and this comes to us from Rosa patterns. Okay, like I said, this is unique. Let me tell you guys, I make a lot of bags. I make at least 2 to 3 bags a week, okay? And then when you make a lot of bags like that, you can kind of start seeing the same thing over and over again, like a sling, a crossbody, a wall. Things start becoming a little repetitive over time, and you just need to mix it up. It's like, and that's where I was at when I picked this pattern to film. I needed something that was different, and oh my goodness, I found it, and I'm so happy about it. So this is a shoulder bag. It is not a crossbody bag or a backpack or anything like that. And everything about this bag is so stinking cool. Let's start with the strap, because the strap is such a unique thing. I'll be honest, when I was building the bag, I didn't quite understand how the strap came together. And so I'm gonna walk you through it. It's very, very simple. It's actually like an incredibly simple strap. I'm using nylon for everything today, so except for the lining, but the exterior is all nylon. No vinyl for me. So on the front, we have this main panel right here. This is actually, it looks like you have 2 zipper pockets to access the main part of the bag, but you don't. This front panel here, this is kind of like a recessed zipper pocket. So this is its own pocket right here. Look at that. I love that. That's so cool. And then the other pocket, when you open up the straps like this other pocket is the main bag pocket. So now you open it up here. It's so cool. So let me show you. On this side over here, oh my gosh, this is such bright lighting. You can't see it, can you? On this side over here, we have a slip pocket. And then on the other side, we have a zipper pocket. So it's just like, you know, every purse where we have the necessary interior pockets. But the way this bag comes together is so incredible. It's so unique. I will tell you, this is not a hard bag. So if you're looking at this as a beginner and you're like, there's no way. There is. There's a way. Total way. You just have to be very, very meticulous, okay? This is like a puzzle. Every single edge has to line up with its buddy. All right, so we are doing a lot of labeling, a lot of organizing, and a lot of double checking that we're using the right edges when we put it together. But that's it. It's not hard. There's nothing super technical and challenging about this. And since I decided to use a nylon material, no bulky seams, no needle breakers, nothing like that. Very, very fun, somewhat simple bag to come together. Okay, so I'll try to show this to you on. I never can quite get it. But you see, when you wear it, it hangs just like a really great shoulder bag. So while it's a really unique shape, everything about it is very different. There's nothing that's like, what are you wearing? There's no like, you know, like too out there-ness about it. Now, I'm wearing very, very bright colors, so maybe my bag would get a little bit more of attention. But you can definitely mute this down. The pattern, the photo that they have in the pattern for the cover of this is such a classy, classic look with the gold hardware and like the green cork vinyl faux leather. It's so beautiful. So you can go wild or you can go very classic with this. So thank you as always to Rosa patterns for allowing me to use your patterns on the channel. These are always huge favorites on the channel and huge personal favorites. I find a lot of times when I go to make myself a bag, like I just need to replace my everyday bag, I'm usually reaching for an Rosa pattern just because like they're just so fun to make. They're so well thought out, and in their usefulness, it is the most useful. So if you haven't checked out Rosa patterns, make sure you go do that. We've had a few videos of their patterns on the channel. If there's any other bags you'd like to see, make sure you leave a comment down below. If you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any comments, questions, shout outs, anything at all, leave them down in the comment section. Okay guys, like I said, we're going to be very focused on the details today, okay? Very, very focused on the details. But this is gonna be a fun one. You guys are gonna love this. You're gonna love it. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so for this pattern, you're gonna need a yard of exterior material. And so my exterior material I'm using is going to be nylon. It's a nylon base. This pink material is a Polytech material, and it's from Indo Love Creations. And then this super fun, booky nylon is from Wonderground Fabrics. It's a bonded luxe nylon. If you've been following recently, you know how much I'm loving the nylon material. So I just wanted to see if this would work with this pattern, and it does. If you want to use vinyl, you can use vinyl. You can use quill cotton. You can use whatever type of material you want. The pattern does recommend you use a vinyl, faux leather, or cork material for the exterior, but this material also worked really well for me. For the lining, you're going to need 1.5 yards of material. I'm using a water-resistant canvas. I love that because it's lightweight, like quilt cotton, but it doesn't fray, and I don't have to interface it because I don't want to do that. If you're using quilt cotton on any of these pieces, then you will have to interface it with a woven interfacing. Then we're going to have a small piece, about a 14 by 16 inch piece of stabilizer. Now I am using this adhesive foam, and it is 1.5 millimeters thick. And this is great for nylon material. Nylon material can be kind of difficult to adhere stabilizer to with heat, so ironing on like a fusible fleece doesn't work so great with the nylon material in my opinion. But this has an adhesive backing, so any sort of material like this that has an adhesive backing is going to be really helpful. This is only going to be for the back panel, and the purpose of it is really to keep the structure of the bag that triangle shape. If you left off stabilizer, it would have more of a slouchy shape, which I think would still work out really well. So I would say that stabilizer is optional depending on the look you're going for. All right, so here are the hardware pieces I'll be using today. You're gonna have 2 zippers. Each of these needs to be 15 inches long. They are number 5 zippers, and they have a single zipper pull. These are gonna be the main zippers on the exterior of the bag. And then you're going to have a 6.5 inch long number 5 zipper. This is going to be for a lining zipper pocket. Then we have 2 1-inch swivel caps. These are gonna be for the strap. The strap is removable, but it is not adjustable. It is a shoulder strap. So if you wanna replace it with a crossbody strap later, you definitely can. But you can see we're not making an adjustable strap here. Then we have 2 1/2-inch D-rings. And then I have 2 1-inch strap ends. This is going to go over the end of our little strap. It's a really nice decorative piece. I have my little screws to go with that. And then I have my metal bag tag that I'll be using today. And if you saw, I have all these over here as well. These are printed out in the pattern. I would suggest you do that. The pattern is organized by packs to help keep everything together. This pattern is not difficult, but you have to stay on top of every single edge and piece. It gets a little confusing, and if you mess up one part, it's not going to come together in the end. It's kind of like a really intricate puzzle, so definitely print off these little pack labels. You will need them. All right, so here's most of the other stuff we're going to be using today. First, rivet press. We're also going to have 8 rivets. I forgot to mention that previously, but 8 rivets, rivet press with the die set to go with it. Then we have double-sided tape. You're going to want some Beacon 3-in-1 glue. This is going to be used for those strap ends. Also for the strap ends is a small screwdriver. I have a little piece of this duct tape here. This is going to be for my bag tag specifically. If you have a sew-on bag tag, you don't need the duct tape, but you could use this tape somewhere else, and I'll mention that in just a moment. Then I have a seam roller. I always like to have a seam roller like this one, especially when I'm working with nylon. I feel like it's just really nice. It replaces an iron, and it works really well. And then I have a 1-inch by 6-inch ruler. You're gonna have a few different marking tools. I like to have an air erasing marking tool and a silver ink pen as always, but I also have this friction marking tool. This is like a little marker, and it's erasable when heat touches it. I'm not planning on having heat touch anything today. However, we do have to do a lot of marks on edges of material that we need to be able to see throughout the entire pattern. We're gonna work on that together. So you're gonna want something that will show up and you can see through the whole pattern, but that doesn't bleed through to the front. So don't use a Sharpie here or a pen or anything like that. You don't want to see it on the right side, but you need to be able to see it throughout the pattern. So that's what that's for. And then I have a seam ripper and then a turning tool, a lighter to clean up any loose threads, and as always, a good amount of plastic clips. I forgot to mention the thread and needle I'm using today for the top thread, so this is going to go through the needle. This is a Tex 45 weight thread from Size Swag. The color is Coral Reef. And my needle of choice today is a Microtex 8012. And in the bobbin, I'm using this Gutermann thread from Joann's. It's a polyester thread. It's just their basic 100% polyester thread. So let's work our way through these pattern pieces, starting with pattern piece A. From pattern piece A, whenever you lay all these things out, you're going to lay your material right side up, and then the pattern piece is going to tell you whether the pattern piece needs to be print side up or print side down. So for example, for the exterior material, you're going to have 2 cuts of pattern piece A with the material right side up and the panel right side up, just like this, okay? So you have 2 cuts of that from your exterior. But then for the lining, you're going to fold down on this dashed line, and you're going to have 1 cut of your lining with the pattern piece right side up and the lining right side up, just like that. And then you're gonna have 3 cuts of your lining with the pattern piece right side down, print side down, material right side up. So you should have mirrored pieces like this, 3 like the one on the right, 1 like the one on the left. And then I already went ahead and marked this, but on your pattern pieces, you'll see these little shapes. Like this one has a diamond, a heart, and a triangle. On the back or on the right side with a marking tool that you can erase later. On the edge, you want to mark those. So I have a heart over here, I have a triangle, I have the diamond. You're going to mark these on all these pieces, on the exterior and the lining as well. I chose to use a silver ink pen on the wrong side here. Some of these seams will be trimmed down. If you trim a seam down, you need to make sure to transfer that mark back over. We're going to mark these even more in just a moment, but you want to make sure you can see these marks throughout the rest of the tutorial. Next we have pattern piece B. It looks just like this. So let's talk about the exterior pieces first. We're gonna have 2 cuts of exterior with everything nice and flat like this. Pattern piece right side up, material right side up. 2 cuts just like that. Then from your lining, you're going to fold down this pattern piece on those dashed edges, and you're going to have your lining right side up, but your pattern piece print side down, and you're going to cut out 2 pieces from your lining just like that. So you can see they're pretty much opposite. The lining looks a little bit different just because we folded down those top corners. Once again, we have the marks. We have a heart, diamond, and we have a little hashtag up here. So make sure you mark all those on the back of your material. And you can see again, I just did it right in the seam allowance so that it won't be seen in the end. And if I have to trim down those at any point, I will remark. So next we have pattern piece C. This is going to be the stabilizer. This one you're going to cut it out with the glue side up, so sticky side. So for me, that's just this sticky backing here. Sticky side up, pattern piece up, just like this. I will tell you, I'm not going to use this today because I am really interested to see what this bag looks like as a little bit more droopy and less structured. I just think it's going to give it kind of a more like relaxed, kind of vintagey look. So I'm going to give it a try. If it doesn't work out, then then make sure you use this. We'll find out at the end, right? But I want to give you guys options to see what the bag looks like without the stabilizer. So I'm not going to use this today, but if you are using stabilizer, this is how it will be. Just make sure it is the glue or sticky side facing up, pattern piece, print side up. All right, next up we have our bag handles. You're going to have 2 cuts of this. I actually thought about using 1 cut of the print and 1 cut of the pink, which I think would be really cool because the bag handle is very unique. I've never made a handle like that before. So think about it. When we're working through it, think about if you want to use, if you have 2 different exteriors, you might want to use one from each exterior color. I think that could be cool. Then you're going to have 2 cuts of your exterior material for your zipper tab, and then you're going to have 2 cuts of your exterior material for your connectors. Next up, you're going to have 1 cut of your lining. This is the main panel facing. If you're using a lightweight material for your exterior, you could also use the exterior cut instead of the lining cut. This is going to be, this could peek through, this could be seen on the exterior in the end. So if you want to make sure that it's not noticeable, then use the same material as the exterior. And then finally we have our lining pockets. We have a cut for our slip pocket, and then for the zipper pocket in the lining we have the zipper pocket facing, and then you're going to have zipper pocket number 1, zipper pocket number 2. If you get confused because they are very similar, zipper pocket number 1 is taller. Just remember that, it's just taller. All right, so now let's work on building our packs. So separating all these pieces into packs makes this significantly easier than if you were trying to grab things and go and not doing this. So do this. So we're going to do pack number 1. So for pack number 1, we're going to have an exterior piece A, just like this, and then you're going to have 2 lining pieces from your A template, and they're mirrored. So you only have 1 of your lining pieces that's oriented like this on the left. So you're going to have them mirrored just like that. Those are the main big pieces you need. And then you're going to need your main zipper facing and one of your 15-inch long zippers. Those are required as well. Now, we have all the pieces for the pack. We need to label things as well. So let's start with this exterior piece A, and we're going to label this piece number 1. So when you flip this over and you look at the edges, I have those marks that were on the pattern. Now I'm also going to add a 1 next to each one of these because trust me, it can get very confusing later. So I'm just going to put a little number 1, and maybe I'll use my friction one for this. Again, you need to be able to see this throughout the entire pattern. So make sure you can see this number 1. And I'm just putting a number 1 next to every single symbol. I just find that works better. When I was making this, I just put like a piece of tape with a number 1 on this, and then the tape came off. But if you wanted to, you could use your duct tape and a Sharpie, and on your duct tape you can write a number 1, and then you can just take it and stick it to the back here, and hopefully it won't come off. As long as it doesn't come off, then you're good. I would make sure I remove them in the end so you don't see anything on the front and it doesn't, you know, look odd. But I'm gonna stick with just having it in the seam today. I think that's gonna be easiest for me. So that's piece number 1. Piece number 2 is going to be the lining A cut that is oriented opposite of that exterior cut. So this is, everything is right side up. So this is just the mirror image of that. And because this material is a little bit darker, I need to use a silver ink pen for it. So once again, on the seam here, I'm gonna write a 2 this time. So I know that this is piece number 2. Okay, so I have all 3 edges marked with the symbol and the number. That one's done. Now, piece number 3, we're gonna do the same thing. Piece number 3 is the lining cut, and it's opposite of the previous lining cut. It's the same direction as the exterior cut. On the back of this, along the seams, I'm gonna write a number 3 next to all my symbols. Okay, so with the 2 lining pieces that run opposite one another somehow, I forgot how these look. Get disoriented. There we go. So with the 2 lining packet 1 pieces, and my exterior piece, and my facing, and my 15-inch zipper, I'm going to just clip all these together with the pack number 1 tag and set this to the side. So this pack is ready to go. All right, so now let's work on pack number 2. For this one, you're going to need another one of your 15-inch long zippers with the zipper pull, and you're gonna need all of your piece Bs, your 2 exterior and your 2 linings, as well as your zipper tabs. So like I said before, I've already marked these symbols on the seam on the back of each one of these, but we need to mark the numbers now. So starting with the exterior, these 2 exterior pieces are gonna be pieces 4 and 5. So we're gonna flip this over, and right next to the symbols again, I'm just gonna mark 4 on this first one, and then I'm gonna mark 5 on the second one. And then for the lining pieces are going to be 6 and 7. So pick one of them to mark 6 on, and then the remaining one will be 7. And again, I'm always marking on the wrong side. And like I said, if you want to use tape instead, that's perfectly fine. You just got to make sure you can always see it to the very end of the pattern. All right, once you have these prepped and marked with all the symbols and numbers, you can gather all your pieces and your pack label and just clip them all together and set this to the side. All right, now let's work on pack number 3. For this, you're gonna have your 2 remaining A cuts of your lining material, and then you're gonna have your slip pocket, and then the 3 pieces that go with the zipper pocket, so the facing, zipper pocket 1 and 2, and then your smaller zipper with the zipper pull on it already. For these 2 lining piece A's, we're gonna have pieces 8 and 9. So on the back of these, once again, make sure you have your symbols marked on the seams, and then go ahead and mark 8 on one of them and 9 on the other. So we're actually going to split these pieces into pack 3 and pack 4. So pack 3 is going to be one of your lining cuts of your pattern piece A, and then your slip pocket. So this is just one side of the lining. Here we go. That's pack 3. You can set that to the side. And then pack 4 is going to be the other main lining cut, as well as the zipper facing, and zipper pockets 1 and 2. And that's going to be pack number 4. There we go. You can set this to the side. And finally, pack 5 is the remaining exterior A panel. It's just this one piece. Just make sure on the very back of this is piece number 10. So make sure you mark 10 along the seams or wherever you're marking it, and make sure you have all edges marked with their symbols that are on the pattern piece. All right, and you can put this to the side. So let's start by prepping our handles and connectors. So grab your 2 handle cuts and your 2 connector cuts. And we're gonna lay all of these wrong side up. And I'm just gonna focus on the connectors for now. With the connectors both wrong side up, you're gonna mark a midpoint line going along the long edge on both of them. And then you can grab your double-sided tape and lay a piece of double-sided tape going right along that line. So right over it, you're completely covering it. And I'm using 1/4 inch wide double-sided tape. And then you can remove the paper from the tape. And now you should still be able to see that line. And you're gonna fold the long raw edge back, wrong sides together to meet that middle line, just like that. And so we're gonna do this for both sides. And by having that tape go right over that line, you should be able to catch both edges into the tape. This is so small that we really do want to use tape and not clips for this. So do this for the other connector as well. Okay, once you have these both folded back just like this, we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch along both long edges of these connectors at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so once you have these connectors top stitched, grab your 1/2 inch D-rings and just thread the connector around it. So the back side of the connector, which has those raw edges, is going to wrap around the bar so you don't see that. And you're going to just clip them in place. Just wrap them and clip them. Okay, once you have these clipped, you can add these to pack number 2. So now we're going to work on our handles. So grab your 2 handle pieces and on the wrong side, mark a midpoint line going along the long edge of each one of them. And then you're going to grab your double-sided tape and apply your double-sided tape right over that midpoint mark all the way down. So do this for both handles. Now, just like we did with the connectors, pull the paper off the tape and then fold the long edge back, wrong sides together, so the long raw edge meets with that midpoint line and it should stick to the tape. And if you find that maybe it's not sticking as well as you want, you can definitely use clips to hold it down, but don't worry too much because we're going to fold it again, so it'll definitely be easier to keep in place in just a moment. So do this along the entire long edge. All right, once one side is done, flip it around and repeat on the other side. Okay, and then once you have those 2 raw edges folded back, you're gonna fold the whole unit in half, kind of like a hot dog bun, with those raw edges tucked inside, just like that. And now you can grab your clips and hold it all together. So now this is very, very skinny. You see, I think it's about a 1/2 inch wide. And it's neat. These are the coolest handles ever. I've never done a handle like this before. I love it. Okay, so now we have both of our handle pieces. Each one of these has one side that has a single fold and the other side has a double fold where the clips most likely are. We're gonna take both these to the sewing machine and we're gonna top stitch only along the edge where the double fold is. So not the single fold, just the double fold. Top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance on both those edges and back stitch at the beginning and the end of each handle. Okay, so this is what you should have now. You have 2 straps, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna take both top stitched edges and we're going to lay them so that the top stitch edges come together just like this. So the single folds are on the outside, the double folded edge is on the inside. If you have a top stitch thread like I do, make sure that they're both right side up. So don't flip it around and have your bobbin thread up, unless that's the look you're going for. But make sure you organize this so they should be just like this. And we're actually gonna just push these together to make one strap, which is so crazy, but I love it. This is Future Jess here from just a few minutes in the future. I attached these ends, which I'm going to show you how to do already. However, if your ends are a little bit wide or your swivel hooks are a little bit narrow, make sure you first thread the ends of your strap onto your swivel hook first and then attach the strap ends, okay? I can still attach my strap ends with the swivel hook in place, but make sure if you can't, you attach your swivel hooks onto your straps first and then attach your strap ends. All right, so this is where we're gonna use all this extra stuff. Watch this, this is so cool. So we're gonna take one of our strap ends, and what you're gonna do is you're just gonna kind of smush together 2 of the ends of your strap piece, and you're just gonna slide both of them into the strap end, just like that. And that's your strap. Isn't that cool? It's so cool. So with this in there, I'm gonna flip this over and I'm gonna work on the wrong side because that's where the screw holes are. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add some glue to the very end of these 2 strap ends. So there we go. And again, make sure you check your top stitching. All right, they're both good. And then I'm just going to line them up together like this. And I'm gonna work on it, yeah, okay. So I'm looking the bobbin side up because I have the back side of my strap end here, and I'm just gonna slide these in. So that glue is gonna help them stay in place with the hardware, but then I'm also gonna add some screws. So I'm gonna take my some sort of stiletto, something pokey, and I'm just gonna kind of push. I'm trying to create like a little hole in my material to make it easier for the screws to go through the material and not just push the material down. So I'm gonna grab my screwdriver, just 1 screw, and if you want, you could also actually add just a bit of glue to the holes before you put the screw in. Glue's great. Just don't go too wild with it because you don't want it all over your material. But once you have that all set up, just screw in the screws. There we go. So that's what one end looks like. And when you flip it over and you have the top stitching facing up, you have the strap end right side up. Isn't that beautiful? That's so cool, isn't it? So I'm just going to repeat that on the other end with the other two pieces of my material. Okay, so like I warned you about, I forgot to put my swivel hooks on before I did my strap-ins, which for me is okay because I can rotate these in place. So I'm going to take my strap wrong side up and my swivel hook, and I just kind of have to angle those metal strap-ends in there, and then I can still wrap this around. So when I fold it over, I'll have the right side of my strap end, and then on the other side, I just have my nice top stitching. So I'm going to do this for both sides. So now we're going to use rivets to hold this in place. So with my strap, wrong side up, I'm going to fold over one of these strap ends, and the material folding over is going to be 1 inch. So I'm going from the fold of the material to where the top of my strap end is, and that's going to be 1 inch, just like that. And then I'm going to mark placement for my rivets. And so I'm just going to center this. I'm just eyeballing this, but I'm going to center it on each of my strap pieces. And then I'm going to use my hole punch to punch a hole through both pieces of the folded strap. What I like to do is as I punch one hole, I grab a rivet and I insert it into my strap. And then I'll go and I'll punch the other hole and then insert the other rivet, just like that. So this is what one end looks like. I'm going to repeat that with the other side of my strap. And then once you're happy with how the strap looks, we're going to just press these rivets in place using our rivet press. And how pretty is that strap? And it is so unique, isn't it? It's such a cool idea. I feel like you could do this, you could probably have some fun with this, honestly. Like a long crossbody strap would be difficult because it would just totally unravel. But you could probably have like little spacer pieces. I don't know. I think you could have a lot of fun with this. But you can set this strap to the side now. All right, so let's work through packs. We're gonna start with pack number 1. So take your exterior piece 1 and your zipper facing first. Okay, and take your zipper facing and lay it right side up. And then I measured 2 inches in from each edge along one of the long edges. And then I'm gonna grab a piece of double-sided tape, and I'm going to add this on the right side, starting at one of those marks right along the center of this facing on the edge. So it's just a nice long piece of tape. This is going to be really helpful when installing everything. And now grab your main exterior panel, and with the long diagonal edge, I'm going to measure up 3/4 of an inch on each corner along that long edge, and just make a mark on the right side, right where the seam allowance is. And then we're going to take our zipper facing, and with the tape side along that diagonal, we're going to lay the facing right side down and just center it between those marks. So line up the corners of your facing with those marks. And then once you make sure that those measure correctly, you can take the paper off of your tape, and then with facing right side down, tape along the edge that's going to go connect with the edge of the exterior, tape this in place. So it should look just like this, and it's not taped all the way to the end. Remember, the ends of the facing are not taped down. There we go. And for reference, this is piece number 1 along the heart edge. Okay, now along this edge where we have our facing, I marked 1.5 inch in from each edge of the facing. So from each of the edges of just this purple facing here, 1.5 inch in on each side, and then I measured 7/8 of an inch up from the raw edge, and I made this little rectangle, right? And so one edge of the rectangle has no marking because it's just the edge of the material. Now we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew right over these 3 edges of this rectangle. I'm going to decrease my seam allowance to a 2mm seam allowance because I want to make sure it's a really tight stitch. And you want to make sure your needle lands in each of these 2 corners as you go around. So take your time with this and back stitch at the beginning and the end. So once you have that stitched, now we're going to cut out this inner rectangle. So you're going to cut it so it's about 1/8 of an inch away from the stitching. So around, it's going to be very skinny. So close to the threads, but you know, not too close. You don't want it to unravel and come apart. So we're going to just be careful here. If you want to lean more towards 1/4 inch, that's perfectly fine. You can definitely have it a little bit bigger if you're worried. And then when we look at the corners here, we are gonna clip right into the corner until the very tip of your scissors is like touching the thread from your machine, but not cutting it. So we're not cutting the thread, but we wanna get super close to it. So now we're gonna flip this panel over so we're looking at the wrong side of this. And if you wanna transfer over the mark somewhere, you can. So you can see once I cut that out, I lost my heart mark over here. So what I'm gonna do is over here on the side, I'm just gonna write a number 1 and then a heart. So always pay attention to that. If you end up trimming things down and you need to transfer over your labels, do that, because you don't wanna realize that it's gone later. All right, so on the back side here, I marked 1/2 inch away from the stitching. So not from the raw edge of your rectangle here, from the stitching, 1/2 inch away. And then I'm gonna grab some double-sided tape and I'm going to line up my double-sided tape just right over those marked lines on these sides and along the long edge as well. All right, and before we take the paper off, you can flip your facing piece wrong side back and just give it a good finger press. So if you just want to lift it up and just pinch it with your fingers, you can. If you're using material that can be ironed, you can iron it. You can use your seam roller. I'm just kind of rolling it out with my fingers first to get it where I want it. And then make sure you give it a good look from the front while you press this seam, because this is what you're gonna see. This is the front of your bag. This is the most prominent zipper. So take your time here to get it looking the way you want. Give it a little press. If you want to grab that seam roller, now is a great time to use it. It works really well with nylon. And just make sure you focus on getting it super flat, and those corners are just the way you want them, because we can't really install the zipper with this clipped. So if you wanted to use little plastic clips here to hold it in place, it's going to be hard to do that with the zipper. Just really focus on those corners. If you feel like your corners don't look very good, you might need to clip into them a little bit more with your scissors. So do that now if you need to. All right, and once you have this smoothed out the way you like it, now we can go to the back and we can take the paper off the tape and we can just tape down this facing. And then once again, just flip it over and make sure on the right side, it's just the way you like it. There we go. Okay, set this exterior piece to the side for just a moment. So now you're going to take your piece number 2. This is why numbers are so important, because they can get confusing. Piece number 2, you're going to take this, and along the diagonal edge here, you're going to cut off 5/8 of an inch. So you need a long ruler for this. Just trim off along that long diagonal edge. This is also the heart edge. Trim off 5/8 of an inch. Okay, and if you ended up cutting off your label, make sure you rewrite it. So I'm just going to write a 2 and a heart here. There we go. So I don't forget that later. Okay, so now take your lining piece and lay it right side up, and then take your zipper and lay your zipper right side up. And when the zipper closes, it should be going towards the top. So with everything laid out like this, make sure you have everything, pointy end is on the bottom, more blunt end is on the top. When the zipper closes, it goes towards the top. From the top corner here along the long diagonal, measure 3/8 of an inch and just mark it on the edge of the material. And grab some clips, and you're gonna line up the top edge of your zipper tape with that 3/8 of an inch mark. And if you haven't noticed, my zipper tape is fraying, so I'm going to just melt down the zipper tape. It's always important to do that. Okay, so top edge of my zipper tape, zipper closes going towards the top, is gonna line up with that 3/8 of an inch mark on the edge. And I'm just going to use clips to clip this in place. So as you can see, this zipper is not centered along this diagonal. It's not supposed to be. So now we're going to baste this zipper down at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, not an 1/8 of an inch. A 1/4 inch seam allowance, baste this zipper in place. So now take your zipper and you're going to flip the material away from it, just like this. So the zipper is right side up, and when the material is flipped away, the material is wrong side up. Once again, if you want, you can use your seam roller, and make sure you also fold down the bottom edge of your lining. If you want, you can measure it, but it should be about 1/4 of an inch. And I'm just going to use this seam roller to help flatten this out as best I can. And then go to the other side and finger press it as well. All right, with the zipper up, we're going to grab some double-sided tape and we're going to lay it right along the edge of the zipper that has the seam behind it. So right along the very, very edge of it. And now with the piece 2, wrong side up, zipper right side up, and then piece 1, right side up, we're gonna overlap piece 2, and the zipper is just gonna tuck into that little rectangle that we have. So make sure the other edges of piece 1 and 2 are lined up just like this. And if you need to, you can move up piece 1 so that the top edge here of piece 1 lines up with the other edge of the zipper tape, because that's really ideally what we want. So just take a look, make sure it all looks correct. It needs to be a little bit higher. And then once you understand where it needs to go, then you can take the paper off of your double-sided tape and we can tape this in place. All right, so I like to put a couple clips just along these top edges here. And when you're taping this in place, you should be covering the basting stitches. You should not see the basting stitches on this inner part of your zipper tape. Once you have it the way you like it, we're gonna take it to the sewing machine and we're gonna top stitch along the short edges and the long edge, holding everything together at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I do suggest you back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, once you have this attached, grab piece 3 and you're gonna lay piece 3 right side up. The pointy end is on the bottom, the blunt end is on the top. So this is the lining, piece 3, right side up. Grab your piece with the zipper exterior and zipper right side up, and you're just going to overlap them and line up the edges. Now remember, it won't line up with the top here, it's not supposed to. So just focus on getting it lined up on the back here. So if you look at the back here, I'm lining it up on that bottom, more pointy edge. And then the top has a lot more space, but the other edges are gonna line up by doing that. So if it's easier to look from the wrong side of everything, go ahead and flip it over. I'm just gonna clip along this long edge. This is the heart edge, I believe. Let me see. Yep, it's the heart edge. All right, and once you have that clipped in place, we're gonna baste along this edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so this is what it should look like on the front. Everything's basted together. Let's flip this over and look at the back. So you're looking at the back side. This is piece 3, wrong side. Okay, so now you're gonna pull the 2 lining pieces away. So this is pieces 3 and 2. You're gonna pull them away from the exterior and you're gonna clip along their other long edges. So the edges that are not sewn together, you're gonna clip these together. Now we're gonna sew along these 2 clipped edges at a 5/8 inch seam allowance. You might find this easiest to just kind of push the exterior out of the way while you do this. You're gonna go along both edges, 5/8 of an inch, back stitch at the beginning and the end. And again, make sure you're only sewing the lining panels, not the exterior panel. Okay, so you can see that my labels on the edges here are outside of the stitching, and so I'm gonna transfer them so they're inside the stitching because I'm about to trim down the seam allowance, and that got me in trouble the first time. So I'm gonna transfer my little diamond and my 3 over just like that. Because now I'm gonna take my scissors and move the exterior out of the way, and I'm gonna trim down the seam allowance to about an 1/8 of an inch, nice and tight. So this is what the back should look like now, nice and trimmed down. And then this is what the front looks like. So you can set this to the side. I'll add my tag later. Now we're gonna work on pack 2. So grab everything from pack 2. And let's first work on this zipper. So take your zipper, and if you haven't already, make sure you light the edges so that there's no fraying. We don't want any of that. And then lay your zipper right side up, and then grab your zipper tab, one of them, and lay it right side down over one side of the zipper so the short edge lines up with the short edge of the zipper tape. And then do the same thing on the other one. Zipper tab and zipper teeth are right sides together. And now we're gonna sew along each of these short edges at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. And if you wanna do a second row of stitching, just to really secure it in place, go ahead and do that. So once you have the zipper tabs stitched in place, now you're going to fold the zipper tabs up and away from the zipper tape. So now everything is right side up. The zipper's right side up, as are the tabs. And now we're gonna top stitch along the seam on the tab side at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end as well. Okay, your zipper's ready to go. Grab pattern piece 6. So look on the back, it's 4. 6 is a lining cut. So grab piece 6. So lay your pattern piece 6 right side up with the little curvy smiley face on the top, just like this. Grab your zipper and lay your zipper right side up, and when the zipper closes, it should go towards the right. Okay, zipper closes towards the right. And if you want, you can use midpoints to help with this, which I think I will. So I'm gonna take my zipper tape and I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm really lining up where the seams are. And I'm going to mark a midpoint. You can mark it on both edges so you don't get confused later. And then I'm going to grab this piece here and I'm going to mark the midpoint along the top curve. So I'm just going to go corner to corner. I know it's a strange piece, but I'm just focused on the curved edge. So I'm going to go corner to corner of that curve and I'm going to pinch. I'm going to use scissors to just cut a teeny tiny little triangle off of there. There we go. So now lining piece 6 right side up, zipper tape right side up. I'm going to start with the midpoint marks and I'm going to line up those midpoints and clip together. And then we're just going to curve this around. So this is not going to lie flat, all right? Your zipper tape is not lying flat. It's going to kind of pull up, and that's okay. So just go all the way around, clipping it in place. And the corner of your lining piece 6 does not match up with the corner of the very end of the zipper tab. It only comes up about 1/2 inch or so, maybe a little less. So there's one side. I'm going to continue this on the other side. All right, once you have it clipped in place, like I said, you should have overhang on both edges. We're going to baste along this clipped zipper edge at 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, zipper's basted onto piece 6. Now you're going to grab piece 4, which is an exterior piece. And you're going to lay piece 4 right side down and line it up. I like to focus on these bottom corners here, these bottom edges. Line it up like that first. And then you can line it up with the zipper. So it's going to go corner to corner with the zipper tabs. So we have the zipper tab here on the left. We're going to match up the corner of piece 4 with that. And we're going to do the same thing over here on the right. And if you want to mark a midpoint on piece 4, you can definitely do that and line that up with the midpoint on the zipper as well. Or you can just kind of eyeball it. And you might even find it makes it easier if you line up the edges over here on the sides, the ones that we're not sewing. But if you line those up and clip along those edges too, you should be okay. So you might have to move things around a little bit to get it to all line up, but just work your way to get it nice and connected. And if you need help, this is the hashtag edge. So I'm calling it hashtag edge, but it's the hashtag edge. And now we're going to sew along that curved clip edge, the hashtag edge, at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you're using a zipper foot and make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, once you have it sewn in place, we're going to trim down the seam allowance to 1/8 inch only where there's no zipper. So feel for your zipper, look in your seam. If you see zipper tape, you're not trimming down that part. So we're just going to trim down the very ends where the zipper tabs are, not the zipper tape. Once you have that trimmed, we're going to take these two pieces and we're going to fold them wrong sides together. So each one should be right side out. If you flip it, there we go. So now we want to flatten out this seam by the zipper. So go around and just kind of pull on it. Get your seam roller, that's what I'm going to do, and roll out this seam by the zipper. So the exterior side, I know I can really pay attention to when I'm sewing. It's the lining side that gets a little tricky. So make sure you give the lining side a good press with your fingers so that it doesn't roll up on you while you're top stitching. What we're going to do now is we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm just going to very carefully, constantly checking both the exterior and the lining side. We're going to top stitch along the exterior by the zipper at 1/8 inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and the end, and just do your best to make sure everything stays flat along the entire edge of the zipper and the zipper stays nice and straight. All right, this is how it should look now. This is your piece 4 with your zipper attached. Now you're going to grab piece 7. This is a lining panel, and you're going to lay it right side up with the curve on the top, and then you're going to lay your zipper over it, also zipper right side up. Now you're going to clip along this top edge, and this is going to be just like the other edge with the lining. So if you want, you should have a midpoint mark on your zipper tape, and then you can go ahead and on the curved edge of piece 7, you can mark the midpoint there as well. And this just helps line everything up. So piece 7 lining piece is right side up, zipper is right side up. Line up those midpoint marks and clip these pieces together just like you did on the other lining panel. Okay, once you have that all clipped, we're going to baste along this clipped edge at 1/8 inch seam allowance. With your zipper right side up, now you're going to grab piece 5, which is another exterior piece, and you're going to lay piece 5 right side down. So it's right sides together with your piece 4, just like that. And then match this up corner to corner with your zipper tabs and clip together. And don't try to line this up with any of the other pieces. Nothing lines up over here. We're just focused on our smile over here. So then clip along that curved edge and straighten it all out. And if you want, you can mark a midpoint on the curve of piece 5 and then line that up with the midpoint on your zipper tape, if that makes it easier for you. Now we're going to sew along this clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. All right, once you have it sewn on, once again, we can trim down the zipper tab, so not the zipper tape. We're not cutting down the zipper tape at all, but we're just trimming this down to about 1/8 of an inch. And then we're gonna flip these 2 panels wrong sides together. So you have a fun looking like little stingray shape here. We're gonna top stitch just like we did the other side. So once again, we gotta be really careful. So I'm gonna start in the back here, and I'm going to finger press the lining away from the zipper as best I can. If you want to use an iron, you can use an iron. But I don't want this to get caught up when I'm top stitching. And then on the front, I'm going to finger press. And I'll also use the seam roller just a little bit to get it prepped. You're kind of like creating a memory mark right now. You're just trying to have a little fold here, so it'll help you get that fold back when you're top stitching. Now we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and very carefully we're going to top stitch along the edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I do like to back stitch at the beginning and the end, and once again, just keep a very close eye on your lining so that it doesn't get caught up and fold in on itself while you're top stitching. Okay, look at our stingray. So cute, right? So now grab your connectors with the D-rings, and we're going to attach those. So lay your connector with the D-ring so that the D-ring is pointing in towards the center and the raw edges are hanging off the end. And you're gonna leave about 3/4 of an inch of your D-ring overhanging the edge. And I find the best way to make sure I do this properly is to just use a ruler and measure in 3/4 of an inch from the end of my connector and just mark a line on the connector, just like that. And so now you see, when I overlay this, my marked line is gonna line up with the edge of the material, and it's just gonna snug right in between those 2 exterior panels, right over the zipper tab. It should just fit in there like a hug. Nice and cute. Let's do this on both sides for both connectors. So now we're gonna take these to the sewing machine and just baste over the ends of the connectors here at about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold them in place. Okay, and once these are basted in, do not trim down these connectors. We're gonna leave them long, and this is how it should look. Isn't that cool? Okay, you can set this to the side now. I'm gonna grab packet 3, and honestly, the slip pocket is completely optional. If you're just not a slip pocket person, you don't have to do this. But grab your slip pocket panel, and you're going to lay it right sides together, lining up the short edges. And we're just going to clip along all 3 of the raw edges. And then on the bottom short edge over here, I marked a little 2-inch opening that's somewhat centered. Now we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch along the sides and the bottom at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, except where this opening is. So I'm just going to start at one of these corners, stitch down the side. Once I get to one of those marks, I'm going to back stitch, and then I'm going to jump over that opening, go to the next mark, back stitch, and continue on until I get to the top. Make sure you back stitch also on the folded edge, everything at 3/8 inch seam allowance. All right, once you have that done, you can trim down the seam allowance. I'm just going to trim it in half, but don't trim where the opening is. So just trim where there's stitching. Now you're going to turn your pocket right side out. And this is where that turning tool comes in handy. So I'm just going to kind of use it to poke everything out. Be careful if you have a really pokey turning tool, because especially if you're using water-resistant canvas, it's easy to poke a hole in the corners, so that's why I like to use kind of a rounder edge. You could also use like a chopstick, something like that. And then I'll use the pokier edge and just very, very carefully poke out the corners without tearing anything. All right, if you want to give this a press with the iron, you can. I'm not going to. I'm just going to press it with my hands. Get it nice and flat. Get those seams rolled out. Tuck in that opening, those raw edges, do your best to flatten that out, get it nice. There we go. And now on the folded edge, so the edge that does not have the opening, I'm going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, now you're going to grab piece 8, and with piece 8 right side up and the more like the pointy end on the bottom left, and then the shallower end on the top, we're gonna overlay our slip pocket in place. Now, if you have a specific place you want to put this, you can kind of do dealer's choice here, but I'll show you. The triangle edge here is on the bottom, and then the diamond edge is on the right. Okay, so the big thing is that the bottom edge of this pocket needs to be 2 inches up from the bottom edge of your lining, and then really you just kind of eyeball it to make sure it's centered. You can use a ruler to move it around, but I just eyeballed it. And then I'm also going to grab this little woven tag. If you have woven labels, this is a fun pocket to add it to. I think I'm actually added on this side. This one says, if you can read this, I'm proud of you for cleaning your bag. That is adorable. So I'm just going to kind of slide that in under my pocket just like that. And then as I top stitch this, I'm just going to top stitch that down. So we're going to top stitch along the sides and the bottom at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch well at the beginning and the end on the top of the pocket, and just take your time with this. How cute is that? So you can see I'm using this paper tape. I really like this paper tape because I can easily rip it out, and it's easy to sew over as well. All right, this panel's done. You can set this to the side. So now grab pack 4, and we're going to put together this zipper pocket. So this is just like most zipper pockets you've done before. I'm gonna prep the facing first before I attach it. So on the back of my facing, I measured 1 inch in from all the edges. So 1 inch in from the long edges, 1 inch in from the short edges, and I made an inner rectangle. That's gonna be the opening for my zipper. So now I'm gonna lay my main lining panel right side up and my zipper facing panel right side down. And then we're gonna measure 6 inches up from the bottom edge. And so this is the triangle edge of piece 9, 6 inches up from there. And really with the facing, the top corners of the facing should just meet up with the very edge of your main panel. So it should just be like right on the corner. But I'm also gonna add a piece of tape here to hold it in place like that. Now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine, and we're only gonna sew along the long edges of the inner rectangle. So you can see I not past those short lines. So the inner rectangle, only the long edges. I'm gonna do this at a 2mm stitch length, and make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. All right, once that's stitched, I measured halfway through, so 1/4 inch up from one of the stitch lines to create a midpoint line going between my 2 stitch lines. And now going from those corners of the triangle, I'm going to create diagonal lines that come down to meet that middle line on both corners. Now I'm going to grab my seam ripper to get this started, and I'm going to rip right along that center line. And then once the hole's big enough, I can use my scissors to cut along that center line until I get to the tip of those triangles. And then I'm going to veer off along those diagonals, coming right up to the corner where my stitching is starting and stopping. And I'm going to do this for both sides. Once you have that opening cut, you can push your facing through it. So now the facing and the lining panel are going to be wrong sides together. And with water resistant canvas, I find this is easiest to do just one bit at a time. If you want, you can use an iron here to press this open, which works really well. I'm using a really lightweight water resistant canvas, so it actually folds pretty easily with just using my fingers. So I can just kind of press it down like that. And then when you look at the front, there we go. Like I said, if you want to iron this, you can iron this, but finger pressing it with this material works really well. So now let's grab our zipper tape, and if you want, you can sew over the ends of this to prevent anything bad from happening. I'm just gonna grab a lighter, and I'm going to melt down the ends so they stop fraying. Then we're gonna take zipper pocket 1, which is the taller zipper pocket. You're gonna lay it right side up, and then you're gonna grab your zipper and lay it right side up. And when the zipper closes, it should be going towards the left. And we're gonna line it up on the top edge of zipper pocket 1. Now I'm gonna clip along this edge, and then we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and just baste at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance right along that top edge of the zipper. Now grab your second zipper pocket panel and lay it right side up. Pull the zipper away from the other pocket panel like this, so we're working on the other side of the zipper. And with the zipper right side up and the zipper pocket 2 right side up, line up the top edge and clip in place. And now you can baste along this top edge here at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now we're gonna add double-sided tape to both long edges of our zipper tape. So just one at a time, add it right along the edge of the zipper tape. And now flip your zipper so that when the zipper closes, it closes towards the left, just like this. So this is the top and this is the bottom. When you look at the bottom pieces, they should mostly line up, both of your zipper panels should line up, and your zipper panels should now be right sides together. So you see what we're gonna do is we're just gonna overlay the hole in our lining over our zipper like that, and then sew it in place. Easy peasy. So let's start with the top edge. So take the top edge, remove the paper from the top edge, and then grab your window and lay it over your zipper, and make sure that the zipper has the same amount of overhang on both the left and the right. And now I'm gonna flip up my lining panel so I can look at the tape on the bottom, and I'm gonna stick my zipper pull through the hole, and I'm gonna remove the paper from the bottom of my zipper tape, double-sided tape. I'm gonna fold this back down, and I'm just gonna press this in place and make sure this looks the way you want it to look and the opening is nice and clean. So now what we're gonna do with both the lining panels for the zipper down, everything is down. We're going to just top stitch along this top edge here at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Only the top edge, not the sides, just the top edge, back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, once you have the top stitch, now look at the back, flip both of those zipper panels up towards the top. So now both zipper panels are over here, and then flatten out this bottom seam. And now we're gonna top stitch only the bottom edge here. Again, not the sides. Only the bottom edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Again, back stitch at the beginning and the end, or you can just tie off the threads if you prefer. Alrighty, so it's attached. Now we just have to close up the pocket mostly. We're not gonna close the bottom. So let's start on the right side. So both of your zipper pockets, pocket 1 and 2, should be facing down towards the bottom of the lining. Pull the lining away from the pocket, and we're going to clip. So what we want to do is we want the facing to also be down. So the facing is down, and then those little triangles that we have here on the side, those also need to be down. We're going to sew those down now. So if you were wondering, like, how are we going to close the sides here? This is how we close the sides by the zipper. So you see how I have the side clipped here. I have the facing, I can see the triangle here. We want the triangle down, and I have the sides of the 2 zipper pockets clipped. All of it clipped over here. So now we're gonna sew this down at whatever seam allowance is gonna work for you. So you can see everything is kind of wonky here. My big thing is I wanna make sure I sew down these triangles. So if I'm going from the edge of my facing, that's about 1 inch away from the edge of my facing. And then from the edge of my zipper pockets, it's about 1/2 of an inch. So whatever you need to do to sew down these triangles, that's the goal. And then just continue that seam allowance all the way down the side. It's okay if it's a small pocket. Back stitch at the beginning and the end. So yeah, for me, that was about 1/2 inch seam allowance if I'm measuring in from the edge of the zipper pocket panel. So there's one side, and we're gonna repeat this on the other side. So open up your zipper a bit, flip open the left part of your lining panel out of the way. And once again, we're going to just stitch down the side. Again, I'm gonna probably do about 1/2 inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and the end, and also make sure you're stitching down the little triangles from your lining and your facing panels. And so double check this. Now your zipper should be totally enclosed. You can see we didn't top stitch over it, but it is completely closed off. And looking at the bottom, everything looks great. And then the bottom part of your zipper pocket is still open, which is what we want because we're going to turn everything out later, and we're going to use that to help us close everything. You'll see. Okay, let's start putting this thing together. So you're going to have your stingray piece here, which looks just like this. It's from pack 2. And then you're going to have your 2 lining panels that have the pockets that we just got done working on. Now it is important that everything is numbered and all the edges are labeled as well. So if you feel like at any point something fell off, if you were using tape and your numbers fell off, double check that it's all there. You're going to need all of this. Okay, so let's start with piece 8. This is piece 8 here, and it is the one with the slip pocket. We're going to lay piece 8 wrong side up. And now you're going to find piece 6. And piece 6 is a lining panel here, just like that. And you're going to find the diamond edge of piece 6. So we have diamond edge of piece 6, diamond edge of piece 8. Both are wrong sides up, right sides down. We're going to pull these so that they are right sides together. So just shoop, like that. Line up the straight edges, and then grab your clips and clip in place. All right, so this is what you should have. We're only looking at lining panels here. So now on this clipped edge, we're gonna sew along this edge at a 5/8 inch seam allowance and backstitch at the beginning and the end. All right, once you have that edge sewn, you're gonna trim it down to about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm just eyeballing it. It's like a little less than half. That's what I'm doing. There we go. Okay, so now it says to open this up and press the seam towards the main panel. So the main panel is the one with the pocket, I believe. So press the seam towards the main panel. Yeah, so it's the one with the slip pocket. So press the seam. I know it's gonna get wild, guys. But just focus on the task at hand. Seam is behind the main panel. Give it a good press, and then we're gonna top stitch along the main panel at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold that seam in place. Okay, so now grab pattern piece 9, and this is the one with the zipper pockets. It's the lining main panel with the zipper. Lay it right side down, wrong side up, and we want the diamond side on the left. And then you're gonna grab pattern piece 7, which is the other, like, fun panel over here, lining panel. And you're gonna lay that right side down, wrong side up, and we want the diamond side on the right. So when we have these both wrong sides up, the diamond edges are coming together. Then we're just going to pull these both up so that they are right sides together. Diamond side to diamond side. So 7 of diamonds, 9 of diamonds. This is fun. And then just line up that straight edge and clip together. This is the exact same thing we just did, just with the other main lining panel. So just focused on this main lining panel. We're gonna sew along this edge at a 5/8 inch seam allowance, making sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end, and make sure you keep everything else away from that seam. You just wanna sew the 2 lining panels together. Alrighty, once you have that sewn, trim down that seam. So it's about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And I am trimming off the labels for these edges, but I think that's okay because we don't need them anymore. They're gonna be sewn together. So now open this up where you just sewed, like that, and then press the seam towards the main panel. So press everything else out of the way. We don't want to get anything else in there. So the seam is going towards the panel that has the zipper pocket. The seam is behind this panel. So see, I lift it up. The seam is behind the main panel with the zipper pocket. Give it a good press, and then take it to the sewing machine and top stitch along that main panel at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, you should have one nice long lining piece now, and then you have your pink or whatever color exteriors on the other side. And the pattern shows that everything should be attached in a certain order, so double check that. Flipping this around to the lining panel with the slip pocket, that's piece 8. And then we have piece 6, and then exterior piece 4, and then exterior piece 5, and then piece 7 and 9. All right, looks good. Okay, you can set this to the side for just a moment. Okay, so now we're gonna do the bag tag. So I have my piece 1 that has the zipper and the zipper pocket, and I'm looking at the back side of it. I measured 3.5 inches up from the bottom edge, which is the triangle. So here it says 1 triangle. 3.5 inches up, and then I used my washer to center my placement for my metal tag. And I marked my 2 lines, which are where the prongs are going to go through. And so I have a scrap piece here of Decoville Heavy. I am going to mark those same placement lines on my Decoville Heavy because I'm going to use this to reinforce that bag tag. And I'm also going to use glue here. I don't normally use glue, and I'm going to use some duct tape. We're gonna make this work. So I'm just going to gently seam rip right where those marks are on my Decoville Heavy and also on my material carefully. It's always better for it to be too small rather than too long, so be very gentle here. So when I insert this on the right side, I'm going to push my prongs through those slits, and then they're going to come through like this, and then the prongs are going to go through the stabilizer and then the washer. Just like that. So this is how it's going to look on the front, which is very, very nice. But I want to add a little bit more reinforcement here. So on the back of my metal bag tag here, I'm going to add some glue. So just along here, mostly where the hardware is connected. So then I'm going to take this and I'm going to gently push this through, just like that. And since it's got glue on it, I'm going to do my best to get it looking nice. And then on the back here, I'm going to add my stabilizer. And I think I'm also going to add a little bit of glue before I put the washer on, just to the back between the prongs, like that. And then I'm going to put my washer over that. Then I'm going to fold my prongs in on one another. instead of away from each other. And now I'm going to look at the front and make sure it looks straight for the most part. I think it does, since everything is kind of wonky on this bag. It's hard to tell, but I think it's going to look fine. Honestly, because the bag has all these weird shapes, in the end, it doesn't really matter if it'll look great. So that looks beautiful. So on the back here now, over my prongs, I'm going to add some duct tape to protect the material and also to just hold it all together. So be careful with your duct tape. Like I have this bright blue duct tape. Make sure if you have a light colored fabric, you can't see it in the end. No, you can't see that. I think that looks good. Okay, so that will just help keep everything very secure. Okay, so set this just to the side over here. And grab your mega unit. What we want to do is we want to find piece 4. So we want pieces 4 and 5 to be loose and everything else to be out of the way. So 4 and 5 are these 2 other exterior pieces here. We want piece 4, wrong side up, focusing on the heart edge. So I'm going to move everything else on this monster over to the left, and I have piece 4, wrong side up, heart edge on the right side. And then I'm going to take piece 1, and piece 1's heart edge is the edge with the zipper. So piece 1 is going to lay right side up, piece 4 is going to lay right side down over it, and you're going to connect corner to corner. So if you have excess on the sides, like I do, so this is piece 4, and it overhangs piece 1 by a bit, you can instead use midpoint marks here. So you can just fold along the heart edge of piece 4, and then mark the midpoint there. And you might still have a midpoint mark on your zipper. I don't. So I'm going to mark the midpoint on the heart edge of my zipper panel as well. So this is where the zipper is, but I'm not going to use scissors for that one. For that one, I'm going to use just a marking tool, an air erasing marking tool. There we go. Okay, so now with panel 1, right side up with the zipper over here on the diagonal, and then panel 4, right side down, looking at the heart edge. Line up those midpoints first, and then just clip these 2 long edges right sides together. Okay, so looking at this clipped edge, I have the wrong side of 4 facing up, and I have the connector on the top. So when we sew this, we're going to sew this at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, starting at the connector side, 3/8 of an inch down. Once you get past the zipper, so where the zipper stops down here, you're going to increase your seam allowance to a 5/8 inch seam allowance only on this bottom portion here where there is no connector. The connector side, 3/8 inch seam allowance all the way down until you get done with the zipper, and then increase it to a 5/8 inch seam allowance on the bottom non-connector side. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, once you have that sewn, only where there's no zipper tape, you can trim the seam allowance down to an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So make sure you check here where your zipper tape is. Like just kind of lift up the seam, and then I'll cut into the seam there so I know that's where my zipper tape is. I don't want to go past that, but I want to cut down the seam elsewhere. So do this on both the top and the bottom. That's one side done. Now we got to find pieces 10 and 5. So here's piece 5, and your remaining panel here from pack 5, that's piece 10. So piece 5 heart is going to line up with piece 10 heart, just like this. So we're just going to pull them right sides together and line up corner to corner. These should match pretty perfectly since we don't have a zipper here or anything. And just clip along this edge. Okay, move everything out of the way so you can just focus on this clipped edge. And with the connector side on the top here, we're going to start sewing at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And we're going to sew down this side mostly at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Once you get a couple inches from the bottom, I just kind of eyeball it. Start increasing your seam allowance to 5/8 of an inch. So you're going to start at 3/8 of an inch and slowly increase to 5/8 of an inch once you get towards the bottom. Backstitch at the beginning and the end, and using a zipper foot here is really helpful. All right, once you have that sewn, you can trim this down to about an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I think I always trim it a little bit bigger than 1/8 of an inch. 1/8 of an inch seam allowance kind of scares me. I'm always afraid my material is going to unravel. So let's take a look at this. Our exterior pieces should now be like this. We have piece 1 over here with our bag tag. And we have piece 4. I'm just going to check. Yes, there's 4. And then this is 5. And then finally we have piece 10 over here. So now we're going to match piece 1 diamond edge with the piece 5 diamond edge. So let's find piece 1 diamond edge is right here on the top. And piece 5 diamond edge is over here, just like that. So they're on either side of the connector. We're going to pull them together. So 5 diamond to 1 diamond. Line up those edges and clip together along that straight edge. Okay, move everything out of the way so you just are focused on that one edge. And now we're going to sew along this edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. The zipper foot's going to be helpful here because of that connector, and make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Once you have these edges sewn together, you can trim it down. I'm just going to trim it in half. Okay, now we're going to work on pattern piece 10, the diamond edge, with pattern piece 4's diamond edge. So it starts to get a little, this is why I like marking the numbers on the sides. So this is 4 diamond, and here is 10 diamond. We're going to match those up and clip together. Okay, and I know it can start to feel a little funny here. Just do your best to keep everything out of the way all the time. You only want to focus on the seam you're working on. So now with these 2 edges clipped together, we're going to sew along the clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and the end, and zipper foot's going to be helpful as usual, and just take your time. Alrighty, trim down that seam just like you've been doing. I think that's most of the exterior done now. I think that's all closed up. So now you're going to grab pieces 10 and 1, and you're going to line up their diamond sides. So they should just already naturally be coming together here. Line those up, right sides together, and clip along this diamond edge between 10 and 1. Once again, keeping everything out of the way, sew along this bottom clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. And just like before, trim down that seam in half. So now we got to close the lining. So find piece 7 and piece 8. So here's piece 8, and we're looking at the heart edges. Here we go, 7 and 8. So it's the lining panel with the slip pocket, and then it's going to be one of the side panels. You might have to start pushing things around. So 7 heart with 8 heart, right sides together, clip along that straight edge. Okay, with everything out of the way, you're going to sew along this edge at a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end, and make sure everything stays out of the seam. So once you have that sewn, trim the seam down to an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Before I forget, I'm going to open up my main zipper halfway. So this is just like the main zipper. It's not the zipper that's on the panel with the bag tag. That's kind of like it's like a panel zipper. The main zipper is the other long 15-inch long zipper. I'm going to open up that at least halfway. Okay, so now we're going to find panels 9 and 6. And we're going to look at the heart edges of 9 and 6. So 6 and 9, I know, back and forth. And we're going to line them up right sides together and clip along that straight edge. Once again, just do your best to keep everything else. The bag is starting to kind of be a wrestling match, but just keep the rest of the bag out of the way while you sew along that edge at a 5/8 inch seam allowance, backstitching at the beginning and the end, and then trim the seam allowance down to an 1/8 of an inch. All right, we have one seam left. It's going to be 8 and 9 triangle, and it's the bottom seam of the lining, but we need to leave an opening on this. So make sure you flip that zipper pocket panel out of the way. Go. And to find our opening, I'm just measuring in 3 inches from each edge. So 3 inches from one edge, 3 inches from the other edge, made a mark, and that center is going to be my opening. So I'm going to grab my clips, and I'm going to clip these right sides together along the edge. And like I said, make sure you have your zipper open. If you're unsure which zipper is supposed to be open, just open them all. You have 3 zippers. Reach inside this hole here and open all 3 zippers. That way you don't have to worry about it. Okay, now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew along just the ends of this at a 5/8 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Leave this opening, this very large opening that we marked, leave that unsewn. Now you can trim down the seam allowance only where the stitching is. So leave the opening untouched. Don't trim the seams. Don't trim anything in the opening. Just leave it alone. Just trim where there is stitching. And if it starts to look messy, it doesn't matter. This is the inside of the bag. No one's going to see that. Okay, now we have to work on these connectors. So find your connectors, just like this. You can look at the back of them. And so make sure your D-ring is down. So my D-ring is popped up. So if I try to sew that, it's going to make my needle mad. So make sure your D-ring is facing down and isn't folded up towards the seam. And we're going to sew across this connector edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance and backstitch at the beginning and the end. Do this for both connectors. So you have 2 of them. Do this for both of them, laying them flat and centered, and just be careful. Okay, so to reduce bulk, you can trim down the seam, but not the connector tab. So you can see when I'm trimming this down, I'm trimming down the exterior material, but I'm not trimming that tab. I'm keeping the tab nice and long. We need that long because we're going to still work with that more in a little bit. But trimming down this excess material, especially if you're using like a vinyl, it's going to help give a cleaner finish and not be so bulky. But I'm just trimming around the connector. Okay, so now we're going to turn the bag out through that hole that we left in the lining. Just be gentle. As you turn this out, carefully pull on those connectors to get that nice and clean up there. There we go. Okay, so you can start to get an idea of how this is going to look by just kind of pinching along that front zipper and then coming on the back here and then pinching along that seam. How stinking cute is that? It's so pretty, it's so whimsical. Oh, that's a cute bag. Okay, so now we need to close up the lining. So what you're going to do is you're going to find your zipper pocket in your lining, and you're going to pull the lining of that zipper pocket out. Now you're going to reach in through that zipper pocket lining, and you're going to pull the main lining, where the hole is that you left, out through the zipper pocket. I know, it's kind of weird. Just work on pulling this out. There we go. So you see, this is the hole here that we left to turn the bag out. Just make sure you, pull a generous amount out here, and then just kind of pull it like that. So the material should be right sides together. And remember, you did not trim this down, so you'll notice that it's like peeking out quite a bit more from the seam. Clip along this edge. And now sew along this clipped edge at a 5/8 inch seam allowance, just connecting the thread from one end to the other to close this hole. And now once that's closed, you can trim down that seam allowance. And then push that lining back in through that zipper pocket. Just kind of straighten it out a bit. And now, with that zipper pocket still out and that hole there, you're going to fold the raw edges in on themselves. I eyeball it by about a 1/2 inch or so. Just do your best to make sure it's all lined up and no raw edges are showing. And then use clips to clip that fold in place. And then we can just top stitch along this fold at an 1/8 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. All right, once you have that stitched, just push that back into the pocket for the zipper. How stinking cute is this? I'm gonna zip up this zipper. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, so this is the back of the bag. And then this is the front of the bag. So if I fold it in, I like that. I think this is gonna look really cool when I wear it because it has that slouchy look. It doesn't have any sort of stabilizer in it. Okay, so you might have noticed if you open up the main zipper and you look inside here, the lining isn't totally closed on the inside here. We're gonna use rivets to help with that. So to start, we're gonna flatten this out. Now it's not perfectly centered. That's okay. We're just gonna flatten it out as much as we can, like that. And then we're gonna use a ruler and we're gonna measure 1/2 inch from the edge where the connector is. And then I'm gonna mark a dot right there. So that's where one rivet is gonna go. And then I'm gonna measure down 1 1/4 inch from that edge and centered. And I'm gonna make another dot because I'm gonna do 2 rivets, and this will help close that hole in the lining. So with this nice and flat, I'm gonna grab my hole punch and I'm gonna punch through all the layers. So I'm gonna punch at that first hole. And then I'm gonna punch at the second hole. And I can grab a rivet and just insert that in there. And I'll insert the second one as well. There we go. And now when you reach in, you'll notice that the lining, the little hole that was left in the lining is now closed. So I'm going to repeat that with the other side as well. Okay, so here's how the rivets look on the front. Here's how they look on the back. Such a pretty accent. I would definitely suggest to do the rivets. I mean, you have to. I mean, I guess you could sew it. I wouldn't. Do the rivets. So now I'm going to grab my press. I'm just going to press each one of these down. And then we can just zip this up. I'm going to get it all flattened out. How stinking cute is this? That's so cool. And then we'll grab our handle, which is also so cool. This bag is just a cool bag. Look at that. Isn't that adorable? Oh my gosh. I hope you guys love making this. And I know it's complicated, but it's not hard. Nothing about this is hard. You just gotta pay very close attention to all the steps. And how beautiful is that? Okie dokie, artichokes. What do we think? Oh, it's so cute, isn't it? Oh my gosh. Okay, so here's the first one. Very bright, very green. Here's the second one. Much more feminine, obviously. This is a book lover's bag, a romantasy lover's bag. Oh my gosh. And so remember, on this one, we left the stabilizer off. So this green one here has that stabilizer on the back, which offers a lot of really good structure, so it keeps its shape. So you can see this one keeps more of the triangular shape. This one kind of has like a hobo look, right? It's kind of like a slouchy bag. And honestly, I love it. I would have to test it with putting all my stuff in it because I believe, you know, having this stabilizer here is going to help, again, make sure that the shape doesn't, but I like the shape. Let's try it on. Here it is on. So yeah, this is just more like when you wear it, it might kind of slouch down a little bit, but it's more, like I said, it's like a hobo bag, which is personally one of my favorite designs of bags. It's more of a slouchy bag, very casual, very cute. Oh my gosh, I love this bag so much. I really, really do. I could see myself making a bunch of these. I could definitely see myself making one of these for Bobby because it is such a comfortable bag to wear. It's not really stiff. It just has a great shape. It has a really great shape. I love this bag. So thank you so much for sewing with me today. I hope you had a good time. If you decide to make this bag and you share it on social media, I would love to see your version. I really want to see, you know, some more neutral ones. You know me. I am not a neutral person, but if you wanted to go the neutral route, again, I'm thinking like a light beige, you know, cork or light beige faux leather, and then gold or rose gold hardware. That would be beautiful. Very classic, very classy. But if you do that, make sure you tag me. I'm OklaRoots on all the social medias. And if you make this as well, make sure you use the hashtag OklaRootsTuts. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.